Good morning. It's June 16th, 2022. Welcome to Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. This is the Western Standards daily live show we get running. I see Claudette and Dion there already in the queues. Good morning to you guys. We run Monday to Friday. We have guests. We have political discourse. I rant. I rave. And most of all, I hope and like and enjoy interacting with you guys in the comment scroll, seeing what's going on in there. So, hey, don't be shy. Get those comments out there. Chat with each other, send questions my way. I mean, I won't necessarily read everyone out on the air or pass on the question to one of the guests, but sometimes I do, and I certainly read them all as they're going by, at least when I can. So you see my head always turning off to the side, kind of what's happening is I'm reading that comment scroll, because live, keeps it active and just makes it different. There's so many recorded productions out there, and there's nothing wrong with that, but, having that live thing where you can just get up and go with it, I like that kind of format, even if it comes from with some challenges. Those who've seen me when I have, say, a guest no show and see me awkwardly babbling for 15 minutes, that's one of the challenges that comes with it. But yeah, it's worth it. All right, let's look at the observations before I get on to my rant for the day. It is No Orange Clothes Day. Yes, this is a day that commemorates the day in 1784 when the wearing of orange was banned in the Netherlands or Holland. It's a weird country right off the bat. I mean, can you stick to one name for the bloody nation? I can't keep up. My wife's Dutch. You see, yeah, so Netherlands, Holland, and then, of course, people from there are Dutch. Makes sense of all of that. Either way, there's your little history lesson. It was something to do with William the Orange, and they're still hanging on to that thing. Today is the No Orange Clothes Day. You must make sure to observe that if you're heading out to the Netherlands or Holland or whatever you want to call it, day by day. A fine country otherwise. All right, it's also, on a lighter note, less history behind it, National Fudge Day. So, you've knocked off that Christmas weight already, you're getting into summer, you're in good shape. This is a good time to indulge, get some pure sugar flavored up with some fudge. This is the day you're supposed to enjoy it and stand out and let your neighbors know. And I don't know, hand out your Happy National Fudge Day cards to them. All right, let's see. Eliza was saying, wasn't Orange a political party? I think there were some tied to that and everything. There's been a lot of historical background with things like that over all of the years. Like I said, it's all down to William the Orange, I believe, from way back when. But some people still hang on to stuff over centuries. Me, I just hold my grudges for months at a time. I got to turn things over. So let's see. Speaking of not holding grudges, and looking at things turning over, Danielle Smith is coming on. She's, of course, running for the UCP leadership. And, I was pretty crabby with her some years ago with the whole floor crossing thing, but I've gotten over it. She's still a bright person with a lot to offer, and she certainly has ambition and gumption. So she's running for the leadership. She's going to come on and talk. Particularly, I want to ask her about her proposal with her leadership to enact a sovereignty act if she becomes premier. That sounds quite interesting there. Then Marcel Latouche is going to come on. People may remember him. He's been a commentator, an author. He was involved with the public sector. It was an Institute for Public Sector Accountability. And we always just have a good discussion about politics. We'll break down some of the leadership races federally and provincially, and maybe talk about some of the municipal insanity. All right. So let's get on to what I was talking about before with a travel guide for the unvaccinated. And I mean it. And the Trudeau regime has finally joined the rest of the world and dropped the majority of the vaccine mandates in Canada. They were dragged into it kicking and screaming, but at least it was done. Canada's still screwing its own domestic tourism industry through imposing a ridiculous quarantine requirement among unvaccinated arrivals, but at least unvaccinated Canadians can get on planes and travel outward again, and on trains. Now, millions of Canadians chose not to be vaccinated. I don't want to go into why they may or may not have. Those folks, though, have not been able to travel by air for almost 2 years now. Many haven't seen family or friends outside of the country, and they're surely eager to get out there and be able to visit them again. I mean, assuming those family and friends live in nations that allow the unvaccinated to enter. I mean, many people simply want to be able to travel again, and I expect there's going to be a rush with people eager to get out and see the world. Not every nation, though, has dropped their mandates yet for vaccination. While I entered the United States twice by ground this year, and I was never asked about my vaccine status at the border, they still technically demand visitors be vaccinated. And if you're flying, I believe they check for proof of vaccination when you cross. Our closest neighbor still hasn't seen the light. Australia is another country hung up on vaccine mandates, which isn't terribly surprising. I mean, that country virtually imprisoned their citizens throughout the course of the pandemic. People, though, should vote with their wallets. You can travel. And as vacations plans are being made, make sure you only go to nations wise enough to have dumped their ridiculous, outdated vaccine mandates. I'm going to list a number of prime destinations that have dropped their mandates. The UK dropped all vaccination and testing mandates. It's a perfect time to cross the pond, enjoy some sights, and consume some bland food. They've got it all there. Italy, they're wide open. Better food. The sights, I don't know. That's questionable. All the same, you can get out there and check out the Pope's house without fear of border harassment. And the canals in Venice are apparently somewhat less odoriferous than they had been pre-pandemic. So you can view the city while spending less on perfume right now. France dropped their vaccine requirements, but they do still require testing. So you're still going to have to endure having a swab tickling your brain through your nostril if you want to go there. It may be a price worth paying if one wants to see the Mona Lisa while it's still viewable by the public, though. I'm not sure how many more times they're going to allow nutty cross-dressing protesters to deface it before they shut off access to everybody. Japan still requires testing as well, but you don't need to be vaccinated. And maybe having some good wasabi on that first meal of sashimi over there would help clear your sinuses after the olfactory violation of a PCR test. India, they're open to unvaccinated visitors now. Canada has a huge population with Indian roots, so I got a feeling a lot of people are going to be packing their flights to get out there and visit family and friends. You still need to be tested to enter India, unfortunately. If you're looking for some beach time, though, on this side of the hemisphere, Cuba, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and Mexico are all wide open. No vaccination or testing required. I'm not sure if Mexico ever even required it. I entered Mexico by ground last January, and all I had to do was walk through a rotating gate. I mean, vaccine mandates have proven themselves to be pointless in stopping the spread of COVID-19, though many nations initially billed them as if they would. The reason nations are maintaining mandates now is purely political, and it's for spite. Trudeau is still keeping his thumb on the Canadian truckers with quarantine requirements, for example. Unvaccinated truckers crossing the border are no more likely to spread COVID-19 than vaccinated ones are. This isn't theory. This is the science that we're supposed to follow. The mandate remaining on truckers is nothing but a federal campaign of harassment maintained by a petty, insecure little man of a prime minister who wants to inflict vengeance upon the group of unwashed who dared to embarrass him last February. It has nothing to do with public health. Biden, he's made mandates a hill to die on as well. And as much as I love our southern cousins, I do suggest people consider other destinations for their travel until the USA drops their mandates, whether you're vaccinated or not. Vote with your wallets and put pressure on those foolish nations maintaining mandates. I feel for the people suffering within their tourist industries in those nations, but nothing else is going to convince some of these political leaders to shed the damaging and divisive vaccine mandates they've imposed. A lot of the world has opened up. Take advantage of it. Get out there and travel while you can. Rest assured, there's authoritarians and they're eager to shut things down again if given the chance. So you might as well do it while you can. As countries see the economic price of keeping mandates and as they keep rising, maybe they'll feel less inclined to maintain or expand those mandates in the future. So there's some countries to pick and choose from, folks. I'd say book your flights, get out there. The cost of energy isn't getting any cheaper anytime soon. So, hey, get on out there and travel. Okay, let's bring Dave Naylor in for a check-in from the newsroom and see what's happening over there. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
I'm pretty perturbed with you, Cory.
How? Why this time?
Well, first of all, England food is not all bland. Some stuff is boiled, but there's some other stuff that's pretty good. And here I am working. Last night I worked till about 9 o'clock, getting all the stories out. And I hear you're hobnobbing with Calgary's society at the biggest social function of the year. And I mean, look at that. What is with those pants, for God's sake? White pants?
Hey,
really?
The dress code said be bright and white and Christmassy. I didn't have any Christmas wear, so yes. At least you didn't see it face to face.
I mean, I'm speechless at your dress. And brown shoes with white. I mean, come on, Cory. Actually, why don't you tell us about the social event and some good that it did?
Well, it did do a lot of good. That was Brett Wilson's annual garden party. He hasn't held it in a couple of years due to COVID, of course. And this year he kicked it off. They raised over $400,000 for mental health for youth. And it was a good time. Again, me being dry these days, that open bar was wasted on me, but Jane had a really good time, and as did I. And it was a good event overall. And I appreciate your slaving for the Standard whilst I walked around and committed the fashion atrocities that I did.
Well, it seems that I was the only one at the Standard who didn't get an invite. Not that I'm bitter or anything, but even James gets an invite. I mean, come on, man, what's going on? Did he wear white pants?
No, he didn't. The other standard representatives did not follow the dress instructions for that event, and I don't know if they necessarily represented us well on that front.
Yeah, and like your white pants did. Anyways, let's get directly to the news. There's big news in the mountain town of Canmore. A group has proposed a bylaw that all doors have to be closed on Main Street because they're emitting too much CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions. So a bylaw has come up that all doors will have to be closed between September and June unless the temperature hits 15 Celsius. So that's a little bit of small town politics going on there. We got a story up on an idiotic driver who on Tuesday, went through the Stony Trail construction project 85 kilometers over the posted 50-kilometer speed limit. There were construction workers on hand at the time, and there was also a police car on hand at the time. So they've charged that Leadfoot criminally, and he's going to have to go to court now. We've got our Dave Makachuk filing a column from Paris, where he was on your show yesterday. He's attending the world's biggest arms show and had to deal with a bit of a pickpocket drama too. So that's a good little read that's up there. And Canada's Attorney General Lametti says he's pretty confident that when it gets to the Supreme Court, they're going to rule that vaccine mandates were all legal. So we'll see how that goes. Coming up, we've got a story from our Amanda Brown that all those federal workers that got laid off because they refused to be vaccinated. If they were hoping for any back pay, no, it's not coming. No back pay for them. So we'll have a story on that. And our finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, is making a major economic address today, this afternoon in Toronto, dealing with interest rates, cost of living soaring, and what the Liberal plan is to try and combat it, Cory. So our Matthew Horwood will be on that, and it would be interesting to see if they have a plan, Cory.
I don't hold out a lot of hope these days.
No, I read somewhere that they're going to try and battle inflation with even more inflation. So I was happily filling up my little Honda this week. Set a record, $82. So yeah, everything's going great out there.
Yeah, well, inflation's undeniable. Well, lots to look at and lots in the news. I appreciate the updates. And, if I get any more social invites, I'll put you on the top of my list for dates to bring out with me.
Okay, but I'm not wearing white pants, Cory.
Well, you see, you already limit yourself, right?
Nothing wrong with a good dark suit and tie.
All right.
It's everywhere.
I'll talk to you later. All right, that is our news editor, Dave Naylor, who keeps things on the up and up in there as we are. I'm going to go quickly because I see our guest in the lobby, and I know our time's limited, but just reminding everybody the reason we have all those stories breaking and the reason we get all that exclusive content is because you guys who have subscribed, and please, if you haven't, get on there and do it, guys. For $10 a month, it's well worth it. And for those who have, thank you very much. It is appreciated and allows us to keep producing this good content and keeping you in the news independently without a nickel of tax dollars, as it should be. All right, so I'm going to bring Danielle Smith on, and she's into her campaign now for the leadership of the UCP and put out quite a statement last night. Hey, Danielle, how's it going?
Hey, Cory, going well. How are you doing?
Good. I heard you were at the garden party last night too, but I never quite crossed paths with you there.
I do not know how I missed you. I saw Derek and James there. So yeah, and how could I not miss you if you were standing out in white pants?
That white outfit, yes. Well, I was hiding behind Jane. She was wearing a great white dress, actually. So I was camouflaged. So I guess we'll get right to it. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. Well, you've got busy months ahead of you now. You are a glutton for punishment. Sovereignty Act. There's a unique policy stance right off the bat, and it certainly stands out, and it's a pretty loaded word right off the bat. So perhaps you can expand on what does that encompass?
Well, remember how our Constitution is written. Our Constitution is written so that different entities have sovereignty over certain areas of jurisdiction. We are accustomed to hearing our First Nations talk about sovereignty. They have the authority to make rules within their boundaries. We're accustomed to hearing Quebec talk about sovereignty and how they have a right to make their own rules, and they often invoke the Charter notwithstanding clause in order to pretty well invoke whatever it is that they want. We've seen in both Quebec and Saskatchewan say that they want to be nations within a nation. We've seen British Columbia ask for exemption from criminal code laws. They, for years, didn't enforce cannabis regulation, and now they've asked for an exemption so they don't have to enforce any possession or criminal code laws against fentanyl and cocaine and crystal meth possession. And in addition, when you look at what happened at the federal level when they came in with the Emergencies Act, the National Assembly in Quebec, they convened a special meeting and said, we're just not going to enforce that here. So it's not actually that we would be proposing doing anything different other than what other provinces are already doing, which is recognizing that we have defined areas of constitutional powers. You can check it out in section 92. 92A is the one that I find the most important, which is that we have the exclusive jurisdiction to develop our own resources in our own way, which is an area that the federal government violates routinely. We just got a an appeals court decision a few weeks ago saying that they have no jurisdiction in interfering in intra-provincial projects. Those are the ones that exist completely within our borders. And with that backing us, I think we need to just put some teeth to it, saying we're going to make sure that Ottawa's on notice that when they try to invade our areas of jurisdiction, we're going to fight back.
Well, we know we would have to fight back. I mean, the government never really makes a secret of the double standard. If Quebec wants to do something on their own, they will look the other way, or even BC. But I mean, in Alberta, we will need teeth. I mean, they're unapologetic about, when Quebec has their own pension plan, that's their God-given right. When Alberta does it, that means we're being selfish and nasty. So that this act would have some means then to push further if we do have a conflict with the federal government.
This is just one area. I mean, the ones where I think it would obviously come into effect are, for instance, if they dare to invoke the Emergencies Act again. And we're watching with the testimony. It was a false pretext that they used to try to invoke the act in the first place, and they're getting busted on that. We would do what Quebec did and says it's not going to apply here. If they try to order our credit unions to start seizing accounts, we'll say, no, we have a jurisdiction over our credit unions. That isn't going to apply here. If they decide that they want to start punishing us because a new respiratory virus season, they want to start trying to impose federal sanctions on us, we can say, no, we're going to take a different approach. I mean, I look at what's happened in the US on that issue in particular. The fact that Florida and South Dakota and other red states were able to chart a different course that was different than the blue states or the federal government. Why didn't we? We can too. And I suspect it had something to do with the federal government putting pressure on us. When it comes down to all of the provisions of Bill C-69, I mean, we can't even build a 75-kilometer stretch of highway without the federal government declaring it a federal project. We're not even able to approve a 200 megawatt power plant. I've talked to some of the folks from the nuclear industry. Our oil sands operation want to decarbonize by bringing in small modular nuclear. Once again, because this is an area that the feds have declared their jurisdiction. It's going to delay us implementing that by 10 or 12 years. So I would say that we can do a better job in managing our own affairs. Those are just a few examples, I think, of areas where we would want to forge ahead on. And then let's reverse it. What they do is they invade our jurisdiction and then they force us to go to court to fight back. Well, let's just say we're asserting our jurisdiction and let them take us to court if they think that we've got it wrong. But there's so many things that we can do that we've got to take the lead on. And I think it's about time we started doing that.
Great. Well, and that policy certainly gets you out of the gates and distinguishes you from some of the other campaigns right off the bat. But while I got you for a few minutes, and since it's the kickoff of the campaign, what else are you offering, in your bid for the leadership? What else can Albertans expect from you, presuming you win this?
I think you're going to see a lot more policy around this issue of how do we assert ourselves in Confederation. I mean, the important thing that came to my mind as I've been writing about this over the last number of years is Alberta is going to be the second largest economy in the country within the next couple of years. If you project out on our population growth, especially since Quebec is stagnating, they don't seem to want to attract new population. At some point, those lines will cross. And somewhere around 2050, we will be the second most populous province in the country as well. So I have to ask the question, why are we acting like a junior partner? We're going to be the senior partner in Confederation. And so we should be collecting our own personal income taxes. We should be enforcing our own laws with our own Alberta provincial police. We should be providing for our seniors with our own Alberta pension. We should be providing for our workers with our own employment insurance. We've got huge shortages of labor that we need to be able to fill the gaps in construction, in oil field, in farm work. We should be taking control over attracting workers here as well, the same way Quebec and Manitoba do. I think we've just been entirely too passive, really. I get the sense that we're still traumatized by the NEP. And I guess we figured, well, if we just keep our heads down and we work really, really hard, we keep generating revenue for the rest of the country, they'll leave us alone. They won't. They're still coming at us. They won't leave us alone. And as a result, I think we've got our marching orders. We've got to do something completely different. We've got to assert ourselves, and we've got to start acting like the senior partner that we're going to be.
So likewise, I mean, we've got some policies coming from the federal government that aren't regionally targeted so much, but they're still pretty problematic. Would you be looking at provincial challenges to things such as C11, C18, C21? I mean, all those C's, the lists of authoritarian actions on this government is getting really long, and we need to find some sort of ways to counter these.
Yeah, I have this adage, anything Ottawa can do, we can do better. And so I would love to actually start looking at ways in which we can maybe step on their turf and push into their territory. If they can't seem to manage an effective way of managing our airports, maybe we should take that over. If they can't manage our border crossings, maybe we should take that over too. If they are going to regulate our radio and television and internet broadcasters, maybe we should have a regulatory process so that we can have them provincially regulated. It's interesting the way our constitution is set up is that we do have two tiers of regulation. Like for instance, with the banks, the feds regulate the banks, but we get to regulate credit unions. The feds regulate cross-border transportation and trucking, but we regulate our own boundary, transportation and trucking. Why can't we just expand that concept out that if we feel that the federal government is acting in a way that's intrusive, deficient, and doesn't respect our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, why don't we see if we can develop our own areas of provincial regulatory authority so that we can enact laws that are in keeping with what our citizens want? I'm prepared to push the envelope as far as we actually need to in order to make sure that Albertans' interests are protected.
Great. Now, I'll close this out with a question I promised a first responder that I'm going to put to every leadership candidate I get on. What would your plan be to address these ambulance response times and this difficulty we're having all across the province that just seems to not go away? I mean, we've been told now we need 4 months to study this. I got a feeling we could study it to death. We know some of the answers.
I know exactly what the answers are. Rick Fraser was one of my colleagues in the legislature at the time. And what you have to do is have either a paramedic or a nurse practitioner on site at every single hospital who can onboard patients and offboard patients from ambulance so that ambulance are able to do a very quick turnaround. The issue is that nobody wants to take responsibility when a patient is dropped off. And so they sit and make our ambulance drivers wait for 6 or 8 hours and sometimes an entire shift. That doesn't have to happen. We should have a very efficient process where there's practitioners who have the same level of medical training, able to receive patients so that we can get those ambulances back out and in their community. That would be one thing. I've also talked to one community. I don't want to name them because I don't want them to get into trouble, but they have 2 ambulances that get deployed in the regular service and they keep one back so that their community is never left without having ambulance in their territory. If we're going to make sure that we've got an integrated system, that we have to have that same kind of backup so that no rural community is ever left without their seniors worrying that they might not be able to get an ambulance when the call is made. These are not difficult problems to solve. It takes political will, and it takes the provincial government taking some control back from Alberta Health Services, which is mismanaging this and has been mismanaging this from the start, and start being more directive so that we can actually solve the problems.
Excellent. Well, thank you for a good, quick, clear, concise answer on that. I'll let you go. I know you're on a tight schedule today. I appreciate you coming in to talk to us, and I hope and imagine we'll talk a time or two again before the end of this race.
Sure will. Thanks, Cory.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, it's Danielle Smith, contender for the United Conservative Party leadership. As I said, she was on a tight schedule today, so we kept her as long as we could there. And we'll be talking more. There's a lot of candidates. I've got a number of them lined up over the next week, actually coming on that we're going to speak to. And I want to keep asking that same question, kind of like I got on the case of all the federal candidates all the way through with supply management. That's a pet issue for me. Okay, that one just drives me bananas. But at least I want to get them on the record so they're put on the spot and they can't hide from that one because it's just an odious, odious policy and they like dodging it. This ambulance issue is just maddening. And as Danielle had said, there's a solution right there. You know, we know this solution. It's you talk to paramedics, they keep telling you the same thing. Because I was just reading a story before I started the show. A woman waited 6 hours for an ambulance last month with a broken hip. She was in agony. She was, this is dangerous as well. This was a senior citizen. I mean, a broken hip can not only be, excruciatingly painful, but it can be very dangerous if there is bleeding. 6 hours. And we have these ambulances sitting in hospitals because nobody will sign off and take the patients off those paramedics. And all it would take, as Danielle said, put somebody, well, for one, the political will, somebody to make the courage to make a decision, get in there and take over, take some responsibility. But again, expecting responsibility from bureaucrats and politicians can be pretty difficult at times. Okay, I'm going to talk a little more on that, but I will speak on our sponsor, of course, and that is Bitcoin Well, one of our sponsors. It's not only, as I said, do subscriptions help pay our bills, but those sponsors do as well. And Bitcoin Well is a good Alberta company. Their name sort of says it all. It's at bitcoinwell.com. They provide services to help you get involved in digital currencies, in particular Bitcoin. They offer personalized one-on-one service. You know, if you're curious about it, you're wondering about it, you can sit down face-to-face, talk to somebody, see if Bitcoin is for you, see how you can use it, and of course, safely get involved with it. This is a publicly traded company, an established one. You can trust these guys. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not. But this is the way to learn about it and find out if it's the thing for you. Check them out, bitcoinwell.com, guys. Take control of your money. So yeah, let's do some of those questions now. As I had Danielle, I'm on a fast time frame today, lots on the go. And Dawn, I believe it was, who had asked actually about, she wanted me to ask Danielle about the entrance fee for the Ucp race. And I think it's outrageously high. I ranted about that, I believe, the day before yesterday. It's $175,000. We talked about that on the pipeline last night with Dave and Derek and I. And it's just a crazy high number and a bar set for running. I didn't want to corner Danielle with it just because it's any of the leadership candidates. I know I don't want to make excuses for cowardice or anything like that, and that's not what I'm going to call it. But when it's an internal party thing, it's out of their hands at this point anyways, until if and when they take the leadership. And there's not much they could do about it, whether they like the policy or don't. So I don't want to get them into the weeds on the mechanics of the race so much as, especially when I got limited time, as getting into policy questions and things like that. But it is a big deal. It represents a lot. When a party is charging that high an amount just for somebody to run for their leadership, it's, as I said before, there's some people saying, oh, well, if you can't raise that in the time required, you're not good enough to be a leader. Oh, that's a load of crap. That's a load of crap, all right? One of the things that conservatives have always prided themselves on, and it's shown out with the Federal Reform Party, the old Wildrose Party, these were parties that had thousands and thousands of small donors rather than a handful of big whales who could fill the void. The only people who are going to be able to make a $175,000 deposit in less than 2 months like this are ones with a small amount of heavy-duty donors. There could be some fantastic organizers in the wings, some fantastic candidates who might have been very good and appropriate. They just aren't going to be able to get that together that fast. People talk all the time, we're sick of politicians, we're sick of the old establishment. Well, you're not going to get people outside of the establishment when you set a bar like that. And that was the intention of the party executive. That party executive, I think, is really, really due for a flush. And that's a hard thing. Now, party politics are a strange beast. The leader theoretically shouldn't be influencing the party executive, but we know in reality they do. And the party executive, they stack the meetings. There's a lot of internal play and push and pull at AGMs. And right now, the executive is very much slanted and beholden to Kenny and the establishment there. Kenny's staying on as the interim leader, but they're still pulling some strings, hopefully, to have a successor of the the established party, the party. And I don't like this. I don't like it at all. I'm not going to lay it on the candidates' feet. I don't know if any of the candidates like the idea, even if they can raise that money, they'd rather put a larger chunk of that towards their campaign itself than having to put it in just to run. And yeah, 25,000 of it is a deposit. But I mean, 150,000. And people say, I understand a bar. There should be one. You don't want any nutcase or clown to be able to just pop in and run. But you have to set the bar somewhere reasonable. 50,000, I think, is a good bar. I mean, hey, you're an average person. You're not going to throw away $50,000 on something plus a deposit. I could say even make it 75, but the deposit you get back if you behave. You're not going to chuck that out if you don't think you have a serious chance of winning or you don't have a serious message to get out there. That's a bar that's already there. And if somebody's completely ludicrous, if it's a troll who just won the lottery and wants to piss around with things, that's what the leadership committee is about, and you can reject those candidates. No, this $175,000 bar was meant to exclude people. It was meant to limit the race. It was meant to push down who is going to win. And I don't think it's good at all. Maybe some of the candidates will speak up to it. We will see. Marianne Wilson saying Danielle's sounding a lot like the Alberta Prosperity Project. I've had one of their representatives on before. It's very much in the regionalist end. She's bringing a different approach. I think one of the shortcomings is very much, I've been certainly disappointed with Premier Kenney. I mean, I very was supportive when he first came in, but a lot of that was based on him standing up to Ottawa. I believed he really meant to. I really swallowed the lines when he said this Fair Deal panel was going to come up with ideas and we were going to follow through with them. And it turns out it was a dog and pony show. They just talked and talked and talked and talked and didn't do a damn thing. And that's when the grassroots fell apart. And that's where he lost his support. And they still don't get that. A lot of them don't get that. But, you've got to respect those. So Danielle at least seems to be targeting those people who are upset with that, those who feel that nobody was standing up for the province. It sounds like Brian Jean's campaign is rounding up similarly. He's talking about autonomy. He's talking about those sorts of things. I hope and imagine we'll get Mr. Jean on the show to talk about his campaign at some point as well. And let's see what else we've got. Somebody was saying about whether or not the Western Standard is going to hold a UCP leadership debate. I'm pretty sure our intention is to. I would be surprised if we didn't. I know Derek and some of the others are planning and looking at that. It's a lot of work to put those together, but it's definitely something we'd be in for. So if anything, I'm assuming something's going to, and when it does, we'll let you know what we've got scheduled and what's going to happen. Chris Gibson saying he'd like to know how she differentiates herself from Todd Lowen. Yeah, I didn't have time to get that to her, Chris, and I don't so much when, at least again, in this early part of the campaign, as I said, I got 3 leadership candidates coming on next week alone. Todd Lowen is going to be one of them, by the way. I'll have him, I believe I've got him for Thursday, maybe Wednesday. I'd have to check my schedule, but he's going to come on next week. I don't want to get them at each other. I want them to explain who they are. And if we get all of them on, then the viewers can learn and distinguish what their different platforms and where they're standing, candidate by candidate that way. So I don't want to invite them to poke at each other so much. We're seeing so much of that on the federal front anyways. And I imagine it's going to develop into that as the race gets more heated and we get more solidified candidates. But at the very least for these first interviews, when I get these leadership candidates on, I want to give them a chance to stick to themselves, their own platforms and what they're going to do. Hey, if they come on the show and start shooting outward, well, that's their call, of course, as well. But I'm not going to hit them so much, asking about the differences between some of them and some of the others. Let's see. Stone Lee keeps saying, get Bill Rock on the show. I already had Bill Rock on the show, actually. So he was on last week, I believe. If you search through the archives, he's the first candidate we had on, I believe. So, yeah, if you look back there, you'll see he was on for a segment. We had a good conversation. I'm looking to get them all. June Marie saying, yeah, it looks like the rumors all over the place. We broke that a little while ago here at the Western Standard, that Michelle Rempel is going to be throwing her hat in the ring. And again, we'll try and get her on. She's been tight and difficult to get on media in general lately, all around, and strange plans, with her tie-in with the Brown campaign. If we can get Michelle, she's been on the show before. If we can get her on, we'll certainly talk to her. Like I said, every one of these candidates will be welcome on here. This is an important race. I mean, that's one of the reasons some people are saying that we had to, set the bar. I shouldn't say we. I'm not in the party anymore anyway, but they had to set the bar so high for entrance for leaders is because this is running for premier. Whoever wins this is going to become the premier, basically immediately. So it's big, it's a big issue. But again, I don't think that's a good enough reason. But this is a big and important race. So we Have to watch it closely. Yeah, I see there's not a lot of love for Michelle Rempel in the comment scroll at this point. But she is an established politician in Calgary. She's got a base of support up in North Calgary. She can't be discounted. It's again, and she's been kind of all over the map, to be honest, in my view, in the last couple of years. So I guess making an unexpected leap into provincial politics, well, follows course with somebody who bounces around. So yeah, I see there's not too much people thrilled with that concept. But that's up to Michelle, and that's up to, of course, people within the party who take out memberships and make their vote. If our comment scroll's any indication, she's got her work cut out for her. That's for sure. But the more the merrier. I believe in true democracy. Let's get everybody in and running. All right, let's look at some other stuff here. And as I said, I got Marcel Latouche coming on, and Marcel's really good. Just as he talks about politics as a whole, and he might have his personal preferences with candidates and things like that too. But he talks a lot about accountability, policy, because we got a lot to look at federally, provincially, municipally. But this one caught me good with that Canmore policy. Talk about the crazy woke municipal politicians. So there's a rule where, yeah, your business can't keep its door open in certain temperatures. How intrusive these busybody nutcases are. It doesn't end. My father actually owns a jewelry store in Canmore. He's not downtown. I guess perhaps this only applies to the downtown areas. I don't know. I'm going to have to get a hold of him and ask what he thinks of this whole thing, but it's just absurd. It's window dressing, it's intrusiveness, it's stupid laws to make it look and seem and feel as if you're doing something to save the environment. Come on, guys. The amount of air conditioning in a store. I grew up in Banff. Hey, beautiful place to grow up. And you get a few warm days. How many days a year, though, in Banff and Canmore do you even need air conditioning? 5? Come on. It's ridiculous. Anyhow, power bills will encourage most business owners to close their doors on those hot days anyways if they've got air conditioning. And if they want to vent the place, if they don't have air conditioning and they're opening the door to keep the air moving and cool, that doesn't do a thing to global warming anyway. So get over yourselves, you jerks. But, well, welcome to Canmore. It's really evolved as a town. When I left Banff in '88 and I moved to Calgary, Canmore was just starting to come into its own. It was still basically kind of a little coal town. It really wasn't much of a tourist spot. It was a few hotels on the highway and, a few condos back in the hills and a bunch of houses, but it wasn't the massive place it's turned into now. And it's got a lot of hypocrisy there, to be honest. A lot of the people who moved there, we really see the NIMBYism and the I got mine attitude. All those people who moved there, that town has to have quadrupled at least in population since I left the Bow Valley. And those people who moved there, they all moved from somewhere else. Tyler's saying Canmore's a woke town. Yeah, but it hasn't always been. And it's in a beautiful spot. You see these people get in. I bought my condo. I'm set up. Now we want to stop all other development. I got mine. I'm going to stop everyone else. And the area where I live in Prentice, we got some people who are guilty of that out that way too and everything. Canmore has room to grow. It does. I know some people get upset because they keep fighting, and it sounds like they're getting sued because they don't want to allow more development up the valley. Guys, as I've talked about before, we have loads of untouched mountain valleys, thousands and thousands and thousands of untouched mountain valleys all over Western Canada, all through BC, all through the territories. The birds, the bees, and the bears are just fine. That Bow Valley is one area of development. And I love how they act as if, this is a critical zone. If we develop that 100 acres over there, oh my Lord, the bears, they're just going to walk. And if they see an open pit, they're used to walking straight through the trees. They'll just fall into it and die or something. No, they'll walk around it. They'll go to the next, they'll do like the song. They'll go over the mountain and they'll find another mountain and they'll settle in and they'll be fine. So, yeah, Canmore is an interesting town. It's a beautiful spot, a lot of great stores, a lot of great people. My father, of course, still lives out there. But it also shows that example of a lot of human hypocrisy and wokeness and garbage that you get, As I said, that was a coal town in the past that was more common sense and, blue-collar working people paying their bills. And unfortunately, it's been overpopulated with a large number of wackos these days. For the most part, it's a nice spot, though. Get out and visit. It's overflow. Banff is packed. It always has been. I mean, there's only so much of the mountains. I mean, the scenery is beautiful and the opportunities, but that's part of why Canmore grew. I mean, you got a city of 1.5 million, basically, metro area just up the highway from you with an international airport. And Banff could only fill so many people and tourists and visitors. So Canmore's kind of taken over the overflow. Claudette saying they have no place for employees now. Some places in Banff offered free lodging to get anyone to come to work. That's always been a challenge. I believe in supply and demand. If you're just going to have to figure out how to retain them and how to get them going. Again, when I was a kid in Banff, I remember that he had to rent condos. Every business there that had staff, you had to provide a means of accommodation. It wouldn't necessarily be free, but you had to make sure there was a place to stay. Because even in the 70s and 80s, it was hard to, especially for seasonal staff, to find. So there were staff houses. Those were the party spots in Banff. Man, you wanted to go get some weed, you went to the old Banff Springs Hotel, and down the hallways of the old staff house there. It's actually been converted to hotel, and they built some condos down the road. But that was always an issue in Banff. You had to make sure your staff had somewhere to stay. And it's just, as it's a booming area, that's always going to be a challenge. Same thing. Let them build more housing, though. Quit squeezing it because they got to live somewhere. And that's part of the problem in Canmore. Business owners, you can only, where can you find space to put staff, and how much can you afford to put them in? Well, build some more spots. Quit fighting every new development, you clowns. All right. Let's get on to some other stuff here. What do we got? Lametti, sure. It was legal. Oh, yes. Dave talked about that. So this is the Attorney General. I published my article. It was part of my rant yesterday with the Senate. Be kind of optimistic. The Senate's been standing up for himself. They've been pushing back. They've been functional more than we've seen in years. With things like the Emergencies Act, they're holding them to account. And it's not looking good for the government. So the Attorney General saying, oh, we're fine. Those vaccine mandates, they're going to pass. The legal challenge is no issue. Well, that's what he's got to say. I think they're nervous. The fact that he even has to say these things means he's nervous. They could get their butts sued off, especially now, as I was saying, the science is in. Vaccines didn't stop spread. That was a lot of the basis as to why you brought in these intrusive policies that put people out of work, separated families, demonized other individuals. I mean, again, I know I'll get the comment scroll going wild. I do believe that vaccination is a good idea. I do believe it reduces your chances of having an adverse event. But it doesn't stop the spread, and it never has to be mandated. It should never be mandated. Let it be a choice. Sell it to the individual. Do not force it. And when you're saying, oh, we're not forcing it, we're just going to put you out of work and stop you from traveling and ostracize you from others, that's pretty much forcing, guys. It's pretty much forcing. So, there's going to be some legal challenges, and I think this government's scared. And they should be. So I don't care what Lametti wants to say. I got a feeling this is a man who's sweating right now. They start losing some of these legal challenges, they could find themselves in a whole lot of trouble. But what's this? Some of this conversation going on. The mandates weren't law. We're confident whether it's a law, whether it's regulation. This is where they're starting to hair split, guys. It was coercion. It was pushing people into it, whether they wanted to or not, and that cannot be accepted. And thousands of people lost jobs, suspended. As they're saying, talking with, was it Makachek or somebody others? I mean, I'm not going to go into the discussions about whether, I knew I was going to get the commenters going. I'm fine with vaccination. But if you're not, don't get one. That's okay. It's the choice thing. So either way, we got a military that's short-staffed and everything right now. And we cost 1,573 military officers because of this stupid vaccine mandate. Now they're going to try and hire them back, beg them. I mean, a lot of these people, they're thinking if they've lifted the mandates, they can't assume that these workers are going to come back, whether military or public service or anywhere else, even some of the private companies that pulled in these BS mandates. A lot of them are going to say, kiss my ass. I'm not coming back to you. You left me out to dry. So here we're in this bizarre world of labor shortages while forcing people out of work at the same time. Welcome to Canada. Here's the real land of the common sense, right? And it's going to be in our courts for a long time. I'll tell you that. There's going to be a lot of problems with this. It's had too much cost. So let's getting back to government getting involved and in things where they shouldn't. And that gets back to subsidies. So here's one. A $40 million subsidy to a Russian-owned steelmaker in Western Canada included free cash. There's a shocker, eh? So, the Department of Industry had an inquiry tabled. It said $40 million paid to this Everaz company in 2019 was supposedly a partially repayable contribution. Staff wouldn't detail the terms. again, they hide this stuff. They got 80 million in subsidies since 2018, and its main shareholder is a Russian oligarch named Roman Abramovich. Doesn't really matter. I don't care who owns it. Sick of subsidies. I mean, it's theft. It's corporate welfare at its ugliest. If you can't stand on your own 2 feet, get the hell out of here, particularly foreign ones. But they know how to play the games. That's how Russian politics works now. When the socialist USSR fell, you ended up, unfortunately, with a lot of bandits rising to the top. And then you had a weird mix of crony capitalism mixed with corruption. And that's how you lobby to the government rather than customers to have your business stand on its own 2 feet. And we're seeing it now. And we got to keep digging at these things over and over and over again. Of course, this is small potatoes compared to, the subsidies being poured into Bombardier or SNC-Lavalin or pretty much any company that's got a Quebec name. It's funny, we'll scrutinize the ones that are out here. And it's the case that this one's tied to Russians, and everything all Russian is considered bad right now to some people. That shouldn't be where we have the problem, guys. We should have a problem with these subsidies in the first place. And where are we doing? But we talk in circles. Again, we don't take subsidies here at the Western Standard. Let's see that company. Oh, here's a neat one. So we gave $80 million of ours to them. And they reported a global net profit last year of $3.1 billion. If they had a profit, and we're not talking net, gross revenue, profit of $3.1 billion, and our government's giving them 80 million more of our own dollars. And again, I don't care what country it's from. And I don't care, the other people say, well, we shouldn't subsidize the profitable ones. I'm with you, but we shouldn't subsidize the unprofitable ones either. I mean, I'm not just making the case that these guys didn't need the subsidy. I don't think the unprofitable ones do either. But there's our money at work, guys. It just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Let's talk about one of my sponsors. My guest is going to be on a little while with Marcel. So I'll get this finished. It's a good sponsor of ours. It's the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. These guys have been a good supporter of ours, and they support firearm owners for quite some time now. And they're just well worth joining, guys. I mean, their name says it all. They're an association of people who enjoy shooting sports, trap shooting, target shooting, hunting, collecting. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. They got all kinds of resources, videos on safe firearm use, where there's going to be gatherings, where there's events. And as well, of course, most important of all, they expose, they bring out the news, they stand up for you and your right to use and enjoy firearms. But again, they can't do it if you don't. It's well worth it for you. Canadian Shooting Sports Association, CSSA-CILA.org. Because again, if you don't stand up for your rights, you're going to lose them. Let's see. Liberal politicians partied with the Russian consulate. Oh, yeah, that's right. Claudette was saying that. Again, these guys, this government's just entitled and out of their control. So, yeah, it was some senior diplomatic bureaucrat was, if the government is really sanctioning Russia, if you really got a problem with them and everything, why have you got you guys hanging around at the Russian consulate and partying with them? You either sanction or you don't. But that whole world of Ottawa and, as far as I'm concerned, inbred, politics going on with these guys, these bureaucrats, this entitlement, that probably never occurred to him for a second as to why that's a problem. It's just a horror story. I've seen was it Selly? I think I'm seeing more columnists coming up. Don Martin as well, and they're basically saying Trudeau's on the rocks. That fluffy-haired, vacuous, prime minister of ours is actually having a pretty hard time these days. His support levels are dropping, and we could be seeing a government that's on its last legs here. He's vulnerable. He's very vulnerable. Even the Liberals are getting tired of him. And we're seeing this. These cracks are forming all over the place, left, right, and center. So a lot of it, though, it's only an opportunity if we take advantage of it. So Trudeau, the Liberals are vulnerable. And I tell you, the Liberals aren't politically vulnerable that often. You look at Canadian history, whether you loathe that party or you love it, I'm in the loathing category, but you can't underestimate them. They are skilled political players. They know how to win elections. They know how to stay in power. So even if Trudeau is looking weak, the Conservatives have got to make themselves strong if they're going to unseat that guy in another election. It's just not that easy to do it. Drives me nuts. I don't know what it takes, what the appeal is with that guy, with Toronto and Montreal and lower mainland Vancouver, but they still like Justin. And if the Conservatives don't campaign wisely, I don't have all the answers. Maybe I'd be working for them if I did. But I do know we cannot take for granted Trudeau's weakness and thinking he's going to be replaced in the next election. I think it's very possible he's going to be. As we're seeing even some pretty liberal-leaning columnists starting to say, yeah, I think this goose is cooked here. But he's not gone till he's gone. So let's bring our next guest in, and we'll talk a bit more about policy, accountability, governments in general. And that's author and former activist Marcel Latouche. He's out of Calgary here, and he's been on the show a number of times. It's always great to talk to Marcel. Hey, how you doing?
Good morning, Cory. I'm doing great, actually. Retirement is helping.
Yeah, and I imagine the pickleball season's upon you. You've probably been getting out quite a bit, or tennis?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm playing quite a bit, except for this week where the weather has changed a little bit. But I'm looking forward to playing some at the provincials, the Alberta provincials, in a couple of weeks. So,
right on. Well, and retirement hasn't kept you from watching the politics, of course. I mean, when you're addicted to that, you're addicted for life. And we have a number of areas. Accountability was always your area of specialty. And
yeah.
I just want to kind of move through our levels of government and have a conversation with you, maybe starting on the federal end. Where are we sitting?
Well, we are in a bit of a doldrum right now. We have two leadership races going on, both at the federal and at the provincial level. But as you said, accountability is always a good start for us to start discussing things here. What we have is we have a government, the federal government right now, which you just made allusion to, which is in total disarray. They have no policies. I understand that Freeland wants to chase inflation with more spending. I mean, this is totally economically absolutely absurd and ridiculous. We have a government now which has absolutely no accountability. It is being found that the Emergencies Act was a total sham and scam because it was never asked by either the RCMP or the police in Ottawa. So what we are doing here with COVID was a means by which the federal government and other provincial government used it to gain power over the citizens. I mean, by passing mandates, regulations, rules, and so on and so forth. And none of that had any accountability because there was no transparency in any of it. It was just a means of getting and acquiring more powers without discussion. It was just imposed on us. And now that the COVID is virtually over, it's become an endemic as opposed to a pandemic, we see that two of the guys who've pushed for mass sequestration, staying at home, they both have COVID now. Trudeau and Fauci, they still have it. So what does that mean? Having somebody who's had a vaccine, I've had taken my vaccines, being so old, I have to protect myself. If that's true, I may be wrong about this, but I took my vaccine. But what does that say? That Trudeau and Fauci, both vaccinated, boosted, are now getting COVID. I mean, the thing is, was this a situation where we were overcautious? Was it that the death rates that we were told about was not really, in fact, just a blimp over what the death rate has always been in normal times? And what we have now, two races. We have two leaderships. I'm not supporting anybody. I am just looking at what's happening. I want to hear policies. I want to hear some of their ideas. But the fact remains is, as you just mentioned in your previous segment, are going to get rid of Trudeau as easily as some conservatives think they can. It's an illusion. Conservatives must have policies that reflect conservative principles. And that's what I'm waiting for. At the federal level, we are we are having so many candidates with so many ideas which are from the past. We are in the 21st century. We have a totally different environment, both economically and federally and provincially, that we've got to have new policies into good conservative principles. Never mind social conservatism. Social conservatism is a value issue. But if conservatives want to win, in my point of view, it's all about economics and values of the family. And that's what we've got to look at. And at the federal level, we've got so many people entering the race. And I can tell you, Jean Charest, for instance, is a man of the past. We've got to look to the future. We can't have a man of the past. Brown is now coming out with all sorts of ideas. And I believe other candidates who are entering these races, both at the federal and provincial level in Alberta, are people trying to make a name for themselves so that if a conservative government at both levels go back in power, they will get a seat. If they get elected, they will get a seat in the cabinet. That's all they are. Because some of them are goofs. They have done nothing. They're just entering the race just to get a name recognition. By the same token, I think there are some very good candidates, but they've got to put forward policies that are going to endear and ensure that citizens are going to get better in their lives, in their economic situation, not just by rhetorical proposals by politicians who have absolutely nothing to offer right now.
Yeah, so getting outside of the race, though, I mean, something kind of before you popped on, and what I was saying in the monologue, though, as I said, you can't underestimate these Liberals. They're strong. But a development that I just didn't expect to see this year, and I've written about it and I've talked about it, is the Senate. You know, it's usually been a non-entity really in politics, but they stood up and quashed a Liberal bill the other day, and
Yes.
they've been holding them to account in committee on this Emergencies Act. I'm kind of excited to see where else they might go here. I mean, outside of the party politics.
I would like to see them do something about Bill C-11, because most Canadians don't really understand what C-11 is all about. It's all about suppression of the freedom of speech and expression. What we have nowadays is, and this is not only in Canada, this is becoming a worldwide problem with so many, because don't forget, Biden is not a Democrat. Biden is a socialist verging on communism these days with his policies. And what it is when you get governments who are putting money in the media, for instance, in Canada, what we have now is a new version of what the Soviet Union used to be. You had the TASS agency and you had the Pravda. Most of our media nowadays are paid for and subsidized by a government, and they are just another mouthpiece for the government. So therefore, we've got to rely on the freedom of expression. And what I want to see is a Senate, even with a majority of Liberals there, starting to questioning what is happening to the freedom of Canadians. And we've got to get a situation whereby we have some accountability. And the only place we are going to have that is if the Senate wakes up and says, well, freedom of expression is more important than political values and political ideology as expressed by their leader, Justin Trudeau. I've told you that before, and I've always said, I don't like legacies and dynasties, because every son who gets into politics after their father try to emulate and surpass their father's legacy, and it's always a disaster.
Yeah,
and I mean, you know, history has shown it.
And I'm kind of scared with Justin Trudeau, because, you know, even if he is getting on towards the tail end of his time as prime minister, he's got to be feeling that. He's got to be wondering, what am I going to leave behind? What am I going to be able to point to my kids and say I did? Because he really hasn't accomplished a lot. And I fear he's going to do something extreme. Well, not that he hasn't already.
This is what I worry about, because he's looking at a legacy now. And the thing is, if he gets elected again, there's the problem. He will say, oh, this is my last legs in politics. I will push everything that I can, and there is no opposition. I mean, with the NDP supporting him right now, we can see what's going on. I mean, all these leftist policies are being implemented with the help of the NDP. When Freeland says to you that she is going to combat inflation with more spending and she is going to be supported by the NDP, guess what? If people think a recession is coming, it could be the worst one we've seen for quite a while.
Yeah, it's just pouring gas on a fire when you increase the spending to try and battle inflation. But it's a government disconnected from reality. There's no doubt about that. But again, hopefully we can see some lights. Maybe the Senate will stand up for some things. Maybe the Conservatives will really rebrand themselves well and hold his feet to the fire so we can watch and hope with some optimism. I'll kind of pivot back now. As you said, there's another important race going on, and that's just kind of starting to develop, and that's the provincial leadership for the UCP. And that's a party that's really kind of on the rocks, and they really need a new shot in the arm to try and, I guess, get back into contention.
Well, there's the Jason Kenney didn't do himself any favors. For sure, every politician in the past 27 months have had to deal with COVID and this pandemic. However, how you deal with it has been the key of how you've been viewed by the electorate. So having said that, Kenney has decided to step down because, he got only 51% of the votes support. Now we have a gaggle of politicians trying to replace him. What Albertans have got to start looking at is asking themselves the question, what is the alternative to a UCP government? Do we want to go back to a Notley government? Do we want to see a new 4 year of socialist policies that virtually destroyed this province? Do we want a government that is going to acquiesce to every climate change policies, good or wrong, imposed by the Trudeau government? So when people start talking about a leader for Alberta, they've got to look at, are we going back to the roots of Alberta's values? What do we stand for? Kenney made the mistake of being too much Ottawa, not enough Alberta. So having said that, I heard this morning that Rempel, who was a campaign manager for Brown, is going to try and come back to Alberta to be in the race to be a leader. Well, are we going to get the same thing again? Too much Ottawa instead of Alberta? Having said that, I look at the gaggle of people who have entered the race, and I say to myself, do we have somebody that is rising to the occasion? So far, I haven't seen anybody yet. That's why I'm saying I'm standing on the sidelines here. I'm just waiting to see policies. I don't want people to start talking about, oh, we want to go back to the kind of Alberta advantage under Klein, the great days of the oil and gas and so on and so forth. What is happening is that we are now under an environment, a global environment, where we have policies being made outside of our jurisdiction that are going to affect us. Most people don't understand what is economic social governance that is being adopted by many countries, and now banks are going to start applying policies and financing through ESG. Do we have a politician in this gaggle of politicians running for leadership who understand the ramification and the consequences of these new policies coming down the pike? And as I said, I haven't seen anybody so far who has explained to me, I want to replace Kenney with a new form of government, a new form of management. I have haven't seen any ideas that are going to affect the lives of Albertans, not only at the provincial level, but also at the municipal level, as well as stand for and against good policies coming from the federal government.
Yeah, well, we can wait and see as the campaign develops. As you said, there's a gaggle of them coming out, and we'll see how many actually meet that bar to run. But there's going to be a number to choose from, and hopefully some vision sinks in, and people see something inspiring that'll pull them through. So you mentioned, I'm covering a lot with you today, the municipal, and that's been an area of specialty for you for quite some time. And I was wondering if we get some thoughts on the latest out of City Hall with that $87 billion climate plan that they are planning.
Yeah, right. That's part of these global policies coming down the pike. There's the problem with this. Apparently, since I am a bit out of the loop these days, it was only a 4 pages stuff that went to the committee, and people say, "Oh, we've got to look at it." When we get this kind of policies coming down the pike, $87 billion. Do we want a participation? And when I talk about participation, do we going to allow knowledgeable financial and policy people to take part in a debate? Or are we going to have council allowing people to take part of the discussion and the debate before they implement it, as opposed to 15 people down in council, 15 people down in council going to say, okay, we are going to adopt this paper, whatever number of pages it is, with or without details, to impose $87 billion cost on future Calgarians. This cannot be allowed. I have said, and I've written already on my Facebook post, we were able to stop the 2026 Olympic bid. Citizens of Calgary will have to stand up immediately to take part in a debate about the $87 billion climate plan. We've got to do the same thing we did about the Olympics bid to 2026, against or for the $87 billion climate plan. And I'm prepared to get part in that debate.
Yeah, well, let's hope that they get some traction. I know they're trying their hardest to get that shoved through as fast as they can. Mayor Gondek was furious that they put it off even into the start of July. So it's going to be hard to bring it up for debate. But even once they vote on it in July, I mean, you don't have to let it go. We can still stay on their case because this plan is insane.
But it's not only insane. I mean, as I said, since I have been a bit outside of the loop, we don't even know the content. I mean, we don't know the details. And it is always the problem, the consequences are always in the details. Are we just going to have a bloated administration telling us that they want to get into climate change and impose policies based on climate change? I am a conservationist. I believe that the climate changes all the time. I believe that we can improve our lives by making changes to the way that we behave, the way that we use our resources. However, I don't want little politicians and little bureaucrats getting so much power to tell us what to do. I mean, let's start with something extremely simple. Garbage collection. You have 3 bins in Calgary. Look at how much it costs us, and the rates goes up every year, and we don't have a say or choice on how to get rid of our garbage, and so-called landfill site management has not improved in years, even with the 3 bins. In fact, we can't even sell the recycling material that we said were going to be saved and cut costs and bring us some revenue. This is the sort of thing that demands a great debate, a much wider debate, with people for and against a policy of that nature. 87 billion is a lot of money, and we've got to start looking seriously at how council is managing our lives. We can't just let 15 people, half of them wouldn't get a job out there today. If they were not in council, they would not be making $100,000 a year in this new economic environment. They're just there. They haven't got a clue what is going on. They just get papers shoved in front of them and saying, oh, these people we've appointed in administration, these people in administration are looking after their job. They are there. They will put anything in front of council that is going to save them the next 5 years and 60 years of pensions down the road. That's all it is. There is no principles in there. There is no research, but just questioning things is not happening by council.
Yeah, well, and municipal, it's just another level of politics that people don't pay enough attention to. We got to bring the debate to them because they won't bring it to us if we let them get away with it. So, well, we can just keep pushing and shouting and doing what we can. So, before we wrap up, I guess, where can people find more information? You're active on Facebook these days, and you've still got your books out there too, don't you?
Yeah, I still got my books. My books are on Amazon, so I mean, they're still there. They're out there. I mean, but I'm not pushing the books anymore. As I said, but it's out there. You can get it at Amazon. The other thing is that I have my blog, and my blog is still there. I still blog, and I'm on Facebook. So I have a number of followers, and as I have said, I mean, this climate change policy is very important. And I say to people, we've got to mobilize ourselves the same way we did for the Calgary Olympics 2026. We were successful in killing it. I took part in debates. I explained to people with Danielle when Danielle Smith was on the radio. I took part in those debates, and I think we've got to do the same thing. We cannot allow the administration to put forward a policy that is going to affect future Calgarians for years to come without a public discussion and debate.
Well, let's hope we can get it on the table, Marcel. That's all we can do is keep pushing and trying. So thanks for coming on to chat with us all again today. I hope you're doing well, and hope we can talk again soon. Maybe we'll see some positive developments to talk about.
I'm very happy to be with you. From time to time, I will share my views, even if sometimes controversial, but I enjoy it, and I will share my views, and I will maybe write a column for you sometime down the road here. Yeah, and get you to publish it. So always happy to be with you guys. You're doing a great job, and I'm very happy to contribute. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend.
Great. Thanks, Marcel. I'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
So that is Marcel Latouche. As he said, he's got a blog, and as our commenter Jet was saying, yes, wise words all the way around. Thanks, Marcel. The viewers appreciate Marcel. I appreciate Marcel when he comes on. And yeah, when he used to go on Danielle's show and a lot of things he'd do. So if you look up Marcel Latouche, there's a number of areas. He's just a man who's loaded with a lot of common sense and good experience to share with people and just to try to make change. I'm going to speak to a sponsor one more time before we talk about some more stuff. And that'll be Bitcoin Well. I'll just expand a little bit more on what those guys offer as an Albertan company. Part of it is getting practical, right? Like digital coin. Okay, that's interesting. It's a concept, it's this and that. Well, what do you do with it? Well, you can use it. That's where you can see that third button they have on their website. Use it. You can use it to pay your utility bills. You can use it as a supplement for your staff payroll if they want to opt in for a savings plan. You can use it just for personal savings. It goes up, it goes down like any other asset. Buy and sell it. The main thing with it, again, is just getting into it on a trustworthy end. And these guys will help you with that. They have ATMs, speaking of using them, we talk about making it practical, ATMs all across Canada where you can deposit into your Bitcoin account. So if you're looking to get into digital currency, guys, this is the place to go. These are the guys to help you with it. Free consultations, bitcoinwell.com. Get on there, have a look at them, and take control of your money. So, Linda and Claudette saying Marcel's smart. Yeah, and he should publish on the Standard. I have negative because Marcel's done a lot of writing. As I said, he's got a couple of books out. Of course, he's retired. He wants to play tennis and pickleball, and we can't blame him. He's worked his whole life and wants to kick back. But if I can get a column out of him, I will, and we'll get it up there because, again, he offers so much common sense. And what he offers in keeping engaged and occupied and looking at things. I mean, this is a guy who's retired. He's doing all right and everything. He's looking for the next generations, this is what people keep forgetting. This is what people set aside. And I'll tell you what, I want to break one of the big myths, or their self-imposed myths when it comes to socialists when they talk about themselves. Socialists are selfish. They are the most selfish people on earth. You can't get any more selfish than a socialist. They want everything. They want everything from someone else. Someone else is always responsible for anything that comes their way, and someone else has to foot the bill. They like to paint non-socialists, capitalists, people like that as being selfish. Why? Because I want to go out and work a living and sell a product and make money off of that. I'm not demanding anything of anybody as a capitalist. I want to go out and work for a living, get raises, increase my value, and increase my pay that way. I'm not forcing anybody to give me anything. It's a deal. It's a deal between me and my employer. When I have my businesses, it's between me and my customers. If I suck at it, I'll lose. That's the way it goes. And if I do really well, it's none of your damn business if I make a lot of money. That's not being selfish. That's me providing a service or a product to somebody else that they're willing to pay. It's an exchange of goods. That's the opposite of selfish. Both parties typically leave happy. Socialists want everything to be forced. They want everybody to be forced to pay for your health care, everybody to be forced to pay for your pension, everybody to be forced to subsidize you when you go on leave for this, subsidize you when you go on leave for that. They want you to always pay for them to have everything for nothing. And worst of all, and this is the worst selfishness of it all, and that's when we're talking about Chrystia Freeland and her idiotic policies of borrowing and spending. When they keep borrowing, and when they keep saying that that's the way we've got to go, what they are doing is saying, we want to live the high life, we want to live with the top health care we can, and subsidies for everything else, and paying off everything else, and we want our grandchildren to pay the bill. Can you get any more socialist than that? A child born today basically has a giant credit card bill sitting there waiting for them, because you can't borrow indefinitely. You can't. It's math, guys. It will crash. It will get top heavy. It will come down. And it's the next generations who are going to pay the price. Socialists don't like to face that. No, they're gimme. I want it now. I want this. I'm entitled to this. I have to have this. We can't do cutbacks because I would lose this or that. No, we have to do cutbacks. Otherwise, we're stealing from the next generations. You know, if the time to pay the debt doesn't come up until after I'm dead, I consider that theft. I spent all that money and left them with the bill. That's dead wrong. That is who the selfish ones are these socialists who want to keep increasing government spending so they can benefit today and dump the bill on somebody else later. And I'm sick of that narrative to try and talk about capitalists and libertarians as if they're some sort of evil, selfish people. No, we just want to be left the hell alone and we'll make our own money. So guys like Marcel, why is he speaking up? Why is he taking time? Why is he writing stuff and still doing things? Well, it's because he cares. It's because, he wants to make sure the next generation's doing okay. He could retire and just ignore it and forget about it and collect a pension or whatever his savings are. But no, he's still at it because he's concerned. And we've got to keep pushing back against these socialists because they're wrong. They're misguided. Some of them might even believe they're doing good, but that's just because they put their own blinders on. They don't want to admit that their constant consumption from everybody else, the forced consumption from everybody else, is good for everyone else. They've convinced themselves of that, but it's not. It's not at all. You're forcing labor from people on the private market to keep putting in, and you're borrowing. Somebody has to pay the bloody bill later. Which is why they always, again, go straight to authoritarianism. There's a great meme that goes around all the time. It says, socialism. Ideas so good, they have to be mandatory. Because you know what? When we're allowed to choose, we don't choose it. You didn't see a bunch of people getting on rickety rafts trying to leave Miami and get to Havana. It was going the other way. Nobody climbed the wall and the barbed wire trying to get into East Berlin. Nobody is chiseling under and trying to sneak into North Korea. No, socialists have to force people in, and nobody wants it. They try to leave. They vote with their feet. And don't start with that's communism. No, I don't know what it is. It all comes down to the same thing. It's all the same sick system. It's all a matter of degree and what you want to label it. I don't care. It's all disgusting. Communism has caused hundreds of millions of deaths around the world over the last century and some. And socialism is just a matter of degree with it. And you say, well, Marxism different. No, it's all the same thing. Quit repainting that turd. It's no good. And it's selfish, it's nasty, and it's hurting people. So here's some of my ranting for today. Let's see what else we've got. We're getting near the end of the time here. There's that act to amend the Employment Insurance Act. It looks like it might be passing. I don't know about this one. This one's conservative sponsored. This was a private member's bill. It's federal. And basically would say people could extend their EI benefits to a whole year in case of illness, injury, or quarantine. Don't we have workman's comp for these kinds of things? So this is one of those things, again, where we keep talking about. It's feel-good stuff, right? Well, people get left in the cracks. They're out of work for this and that. We got to get it. We got to force everybody to pay so that they don't get left out. We can't afford all these things, you guys. We've already got a program for this. We've got long-term disability. We've got workman's compensation. Why are we now looking to bloat and expend more through the EI system? You're putting program on top of program on top of program. I believe AISH, for example, people with severe, it's the Alberta version of the program, Assured Income for Severely Handicapped. They might have changed the name since even. But for people who are truly in dire straits, they should get some money. I believe in taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. And if it's not enough, let's increase that program. Let's not come up with 12 different ones to keep covering people who are sick or on disabilities or have other issues. But the Conservatives, this is where I start wondering if they're, again, not much better than the Liberals or NDP. And they just keep bloating these programs. Sylvia's saying, what about seniors? When will there be something for them? Yeah, well, there's the pension plan, which isn't a hell of a lot. And there's OAS, which isn't a hell of a lot. It's some stuff. And, but how much can we expand it? It's an ugly cycle we've gotten ourselves into. Independency. People raised to think there's going to be something there for them when they retire. And then they're going to be tempted to push the politicians and say, well, spend more now, borrow more now, because I need to keep living. I didn't save enough. I didn't have a private pension plan. And I don't want to leave seniors out to dry, but this shows the trouble, the difficulty we're in. Some people are going to be in pretty tight when they retire. And I don't want them starving. I don't want them left out. But we got to really start reevaluating. We just can't have everything all the time, guys. We got to start cutting back. And you know what? We can cut back a whole lot of things. Like I said, that corporate welfare, a lot of the waste. I'm going to be talking to Franco Terrazzano tomorrow, by the way, because we had a governor general spend, what was it, $100,000 in catering for a flight? What a slap in the face. What a slap in the face. Well, we do have programs where people don't have enough money and they're not getting by. And this is what our elites are doing. $100,000 for munchies on a plane. Rest of us, if we can afford to fly at all, you get a bag of old peanuts thrown at you by a grumpy flight attendant. A little different when you get those liberal high levels, including the Governor General. So we'll talk to him a bit about that. Let's see. Everything else, everybody getting upset and divided. There's another story. Some small Ontario town, I guess for Pride, they put up a bunch of flags around the community, and somebody went out in the night and cut them all up and shred them and tore them down. Like, people, be better. Be better. Hey, even if you don't like Pride, I got no issues with it or whatever. Just leave it alone. So what? Man, this is what adds to the division. And then this gets the woke up in arms, and then they start, looking for more excuses to crack down further on everybody else. So come on, behave. It's just Pride. It ain't hurting you. God. That's some other stuff. Yeah, nothing much standing up. I'm going to talk, run this up and finish it up. But for tomorrow, as I said, I got Franco Terrazzano from the Taxpayers Federation. He's always a good guest and expose some more waste, particularly in the Governor General's office, because it's just an outrage. And then I'm going to have Jay Hill coming on again. I like getting Jay on again. It's a guy with 17 years of experience in Parliament, so he can add that voice of experience and talk about some of these things to some of all these politics that are going on. He's retired now, too. A lot of these guys, they're retired. They got nothing to lose. Then they can speak openly and candidly and dig into those issues. So that'll be a good conversation with him tomorrow. So as you can see with those links, and I haven't been reminding people of that much lately as well. Make sure if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube or Rumble or wherever, subscribe, share this stuff, guys. This is part of what we're doing. This is how we can keep spreading the word, keep expanding our presence. We appreciate it. Hit that like you hear from all those social media mavens, and smash that like button, hit that share, all that stuff. But do it, guys. It's important. There's a reason they say it all the time. And check out westernstandard.news for all those stories as they break, as they come out, and get a subscription if you haven't already. Okay, guys, thanks for participating today. Looking forward to talking to you all again tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. sharp.